Hello people. Today we have a collection of Glock magazines to share with you. This first variation in the collection is what I believe to be the earliest Glock magazine, the earliest of the first generation Glock magazines. What makes this a first generation mag is this U-notch shape at the rear of the feed lips. All Glock magazines today are faceted like a diamond with sharp corners. And then the second noticeable feature is this edge, the straight line edge at the top of the tube before it tapers. On both sides they're straight. Now if you're familiar with Glock, you'll know Glock's first model pistol is the Glock 17, and that is a 17 round capacity pistol, so this has 17 rounds. Now above these bottom indicator holes we see another hole that's just revealing the steel tube beneath, and same thing with these 4 holes on the side. I think these holes on the side and these 2 holes at the rear, I think this is where the machine was holding the steel tube in place while the plastic was being molded around it. But I really don't know. If you know more about how these were made, please put it in the comments below. I'd really like to know more. And it appears as if this is stainless steel or nickeled carbon. I'm not really sure exactly. It almost has a yellow tint to it, like it might be nickeled steel, but I assume today they're stainless steel. Again, I'm not really sure. Now at the bottom of the tube, it's very flush and flat. The tubes today taper out a little bit right at the bottom there. And then the Glock logo. We've got the Austria marking below the Glock logo. And the follower, this is a first generation follower. It has no caliber markings, no generation markings. But if you'll notice, the shape of that follower is going to change soon. And the base pad, I thought originally when I first bought this magazine, I thought this was an aftermarket pad. This is the original Glock base pad. No Glock marking and no retainer plate. These base pads are held on with these little tabs molded into the side of the tube, which are still used today on modern Glock magazines. They've just bothered to add a retainer plate, and the retainer plate, you'll know that you have a retainer plate because there'll be a hole right here. So the second variation in the collection is also a U-notch with the same edges at the top here. But the only noticeable difference is, one, this awkward little extension they added at the bottom. It's got a real hard 90-degree edge at the top, but it's faceted on the sides, which is so strange compared to what they're actually doing today. And also the Glock logo. The Austria mark, they moved the Austria marking from below the logo to on top of the logo, and it seems like the ceramic plates that make up the mold, you can see where those lines are. The base pad at the bottom, they added a Glock logo, but still no retainer plate. And the same follower as before. This third variation, the first thing that I noticed right away was this change in the angle on this ledge. I don't know why they bothered to do that, and they didn't do it on this side. Oh, look at that. The bottom of the magazine now is like what you would see today. Just tapers out slightly. and the Glock logo. They moved the Glock logo up closer to the bottom round indicator holes, and they moved the Austria marking below the Glock logo like it was in the very first variation. Now, I don't believe this follower nor this base pad are original to this tube. I'm missing the retainer plate, of course, but I don't believe those are original based upon what I see on this next magazine. This next fourth variation is still a U-notch. It's got that change in the ledge there. The bottom edge is the same. The Glock logo is the same. But notice the follower is not like this follower. It's not marked with a caliber or a number, but it's not exactly like this follower either. They bothered to put a slight shape difference on the angle here. It's very subtle, but you can see with wear that there's certainly a change there in the shape. And then, of course, it's the base pad. The base pad has the logo, has a retainer plate, but there's no part number yet. A lot of you are wondering when the part number is going to show up on that base pad. And we see that here. 455. It's marked 455. So this style base pad and this style follower won't be seen until much later. Now, when we look at this magazine, it's got that second variation follower. It's got a base pad that's marked 455. Clearly, though, this is for a Glock 19. It's got a 15 round capacity. It's just a little shorter, but it's got all the same indicators as this fourth variation. It's got the same base at the bottom. The logo orientation is the same. Same U-notch. The only difference between these two magazines and the three before is the blackened tube. And these are the only two blackened Glock magazines that I find. I've seen thousands of Glock magazines and they're all stainless. These two probably made about the same time. Of course, probably had an experimental finish. Now this next variation we have is no longer a first generation magazine. This is now what I consider a second generation magazine. It's no longer a U-notch, it's a square notch with sharp corners. And you can see where the tube was brought together, folded and brought together. It's a very rough construction. This angle is still slightly, I don't know, it still has a slight angle to it, but they changed that edge. It's no longer a rounded edge, a soft edge. It's got a really sharp angle to it, a faceted angle, like a diamond cut. And they put the caliber 9mm at the top there. We still have these holes here at the rear, but the holes here are not as noticeable. Or there are no holes, but you can see where there's an indication of something. So I don't know what those were for. The Austria marking is a little bit farther away from the Glock logo now. And of course, this is an aftermarket base pad. That's not the original base pad. That's just how I purchased it. And then this is the final variation in this collection. There are a lot more magazines I have in the collection that just continue to be more recent, and most of you are going to be familiar with those magazines. I end with this because this is the law enforcement only magazine that was a result of the assault weapons ban that went into effect in 1994. And for a time when the high capacity nature of these magazines were no longer available to civilians, these magazines skyrocketed in price. Some people were paying over $100 for one. This base pad, of course, has a number 3208. So I'm wondering what's different about the 455 base pad and this base pad. They're the same, really. They have all the same accommodations. It's just a different number. It's weird. The follower. So here is where we run into the third generation 9mm follower. If you'd like to see more magazines that continue down the line in the collection, let me know in the comments below, and maybe I'll do a second video. Thanks for watching, people. Make it a great day.